The fluorescent lights of the hospital cafeteria buzzed overhead like trapped insects, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made my coffee look more like rust water than anything drinkable. I wrapped both hands around the paper cup anyway, letting the heat seep into my perpetually cold fingers. 3 double shifts in 4 days had left me hollow, a shell of myself moving through motions I barely registered anymore. The vinyl seat squeaked as I shifted my weight, my scrubs, faded blue and worn thin at the knees, clinging to my exhausted body. Around me, the cafeteria hummed with the peculiar energy of a hospital at 2 a.m. Hushed conversations between residents, the clatter of trays, someone's pager going off with that shrill, demanding beep that never failed to make my shoulders tense. I should have been sleeping. Should have been home in my tiny studio apartment. The one with the leaking faucet I couldn't afford to fix and the neighbor who played bass at all hours. But home meant silence, and silence meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering things I'd spent 6 months trying to forget. Like Marcus. Like the way he'd laughed when I'd told him I was pregnant. Like how that laugh had cut deeper than any of the words that followed. "Emma Chen?" A voice pulled me from my spiral. I looked up to find Dr. Morrison, one of the ER attendings, holding a clipboard. "We need you in trauma too. MVA coming in, 5 minutes out." I nodded, already standing, my body moving on autopilot. The coffee went into the trash, barely touched. Another waste of $3 I couldn't spare. But that was life now. A series of small wastes, small losses, small moments of nothing adding up to an existence I barely recognized as my own. The ER was organized chaos when I pushed through the double doors. Nurses moved with practiced efficiency, prepping beds, checking equipment. The ambulance bay doors stood open to the November night, and cold air rushed in, carrying with it the smell of rain and asphalt. I pulled on fresh gloves, checked the trauma cart. My hands knew these motions so well I could do them blind. Maybe I was blind, in a way. Sleepwalking through life, invisible to everyone including myself. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights painted the walls. "Single vehicle collision," the paramedic called out as they wheeled the gurney in. "Male, late 20s, GCS 15, vital, stable, refusing transport initially, but I'm fine." The voice that cut through the controlled chaos was dark velvet over steel, the kind of voice that made people stop and listen without quite knowing why. "This is unnecessary." I looked up from the supply cart, and the world tilted slightly on its axis. He sat on the gurney like it was a throne, his posture rigid despite the blood trailing down the side of his face from a gash near his temple. His suit, and I knew enough to recognize it was the kind of suit that cost more than I made in 6 months, was torn at the shoulder, the white shirt beneath stained crimson. But it was his face that held me frozen. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from marble, dark eyes that swept the room with the kind of assessment that felt almost military. He couldn't have been much older than 30. But there was something ancient in those eyes, something that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. And behind him, positioned at the door like sentinels, stood 2 men in dark suits that bulged slightly at the hip. They weren't hospital security. They weren't police. They were something else entirely. "Sir, you need to let us examine you," Dr. Morrison said, his voice tight. I recognized that tone. It was the one he used when he was nervous but trying not to show it. The man's gaze shifted to the doctor, and I watched Morrison actually take a step back. "I've had worse shaving. Just clean it up so I can leave. Hospital policy requires—" "I don't care about your policies." Each word was precise, controlled. But underneath ran a current of something dangerous. "Clean the wound, now." Dr. Morrison's eyes found mine across the room. "Nurse Chen, can you handle this? I need to check on the patient in Bay 3. Coward, I thought, but couldn't really blame him. Every instinct I possessed was screaming at me to refuse, to find some excuse, any excuse. This man radiated danger the way other people radiated warmth. It came off him in waves, invisible but undeniable. But I was tired. So bone-deep tired that fear felt like just another emotion I didn't have the energy to process. "Of course," I heard myself say. I gathered supplies, antiseptic, gauze, butterfly closures, and approached the gurney. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. He smelled like expensive cologne mixed with leather and something else, something metallic that might have been blood or might have been gunpowder. The scent made my head spin. "This might sting," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'd stitched up gang members, overdose patients, people who'd tried to kill themselves or others. I could handle one man with a head wound, no matter how unsettling his presence. I reached up to clean the blood from his temple, and his hand shot out, catching my wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop me cold. His skin was warm against mine, and I felt my pulse jump under his fingers. "Your hands are shaking." It wasn't a question. "I'm fine." I tried to pull away, but his grip didn't loosen. "I need to clean that wound before it gets infected." His eyes locked onto mine, and I felt pinned, a butterfly under glass. They were darker than I'd thought, almost black in the harsh fluorescent light. And there was something in them that made my breath catch. Not cruelty, exactly. More like the absolute certainty of someone who'd never been told no, and wouldn't know how to process it if they were. "When's the last time you slept?" he asked. The question was so unexpected I actually laughed, a short, bitter sound. "What are you, my doctor?" "Answer the question." "I don't have to answer anything. You're the patient, not my interrogator." I pulled harder at my wrist, and this time he let go. My skin tingled where he'd touched me. "Now sit still and let me work." For a moment I thought he might refuse. Then, something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "You're not afraid of me. Should I be?" I started cleaning the wound, my hands steady now despite everything. The cut wasn't deep, wouldn't need stitches. Just butterfly closures and a stern lecture about getting checked for concussion symptoms, which he'd ignore. He didn't answer. Just watched me work with an intensity that made my skin prickle. I could feel his guards watching too, their presence a constant pressure against my back. "You're good at this," he said after a moment. "It's my job." That's not what I meant. I didn't ask him to clarify, didn't want to know what he meant, or why his voice did something strange to my stomach. I focused on the wound, on the familiar motions of cleaning and closing, on anything but the way he was looking at me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. "Done," I said, stepping back and stripping off my gloves. "You should really stay for observation, but I'm guessing you won't." "You guess correctly." He stood, and I realized he was tall, at least 6'2", with the kind of build that spoke of regular gym time and possibly violence. "What's your name?" "It's on my badge." "I want to hear you say it." There was something in his tone that made refusing feel impossible, even though every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to walk away. "Emma. Emma Chen." He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. "Emma Chen." And then he pulled out his phone. Not a phone. Phones plural, I noticed, because he had at least 2 visible, and made a call without taking his eyes off me. "Bring the car around. We're leaving." "Sir, you really should—" "Thank you for your help, Emma Chen." He started toward the door, his guards falling into formation around him. Then he paused, turning back. "You work too much. You should go home. Sleep. I don't need life advice from a patient." That almost smile again. "No." "I don't suppose you do." He reached into his jacket. His guards tensed, I noticed, like even they weren't entirely sure what he might pull out, and withdrew a business card. He held it out to me. "If you ever need anything, I won't." But I took the card anyway, because refusing felt dangerous in a way I couldn't articulate. The card was heavy, expensive stock, with nothing on it but a name in elegant script, Damien Cross, and a phone number. "You might be surprised," he said. Then he was gone, swept out into the night by his entourage of shadows. I stood there holding the card, my heart beating too fast, my skin still tingling where he'd touched me. Around me, the ER had returned to its normal chaos, but it felt different now, like he'd left some mark on the space itself. "Emma," one of the other nurses, Sarah, appeared at my elbow. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine." I shoved the card into my pocket, just tired. That guy was intense. "Did you see those bodyguards?" "I'm pretty sure they were armed." "I didn't notice." A lie. I'd noticed everything. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I treated a kid with a broken arm, an elderly woman with chest pains, a drunk college student who'd fallen off a roof trying to impress his friends. Normal things, safe things. Things that didn't make my pulse race or my hands shake. But when I finally clocked out at 6 a.m., when I walked out into the gray November dawn, I found myself pulling out that card, staring at the name, wondering who Damian Cross was, and why he'd looked at me like I was the most interesting thing he'd seen in years. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Lunch this week? We should talk. We should talk. As if he hadn't made his position crystal clear 6 months ago when he'd told me to take care of it and walked out of my life without looking back. I deleted the message without responding and started the long walk to the bus stop. My feet ached, my back ached, everything ached. The morning air was cold enough to burn my lungs, and somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. I threw the business card in the first trash can I passed, or at least I tried to. My hand stopped halfway there, hovering over the bin, refusing to let go. With a sound of frustration, I shoved it back into my pocket and kept walking. 3 days later, I was back in the ER for another overnight shift when my life imploded in a way I never saw coming. The evening started normally enough. I checked in, reviewed patient charts, helped set up for what promised to be a busy Friday night. Dr. Morrison was off, replaced by Dr. Patterson, who at least didn't look at me like I was about to break every time we spoke. At 7 p.m., Sarah found me restocking supplies. "Hey, there's someone asking for you at the front desk." My stomach dropped. "Who?" Didn't give a name. Just said it was personal and urgent. She waggled her eyebrows. "He's really hot, Em. Like, stupidly hot. Is there something you're not telling me?" But I was already moving, pushing past her, my heart hammering against my ribs. Because I knew. Somehow, I just knew who was waiting for me, except I was wrong. Marcus stood in the waiting room, looking exactly as he had 6 months ago when he'd walked out. Perfect hair, perfect suit, perfect smile that had once made me believe in fairy tales and now just made me feel sick. And beside him stood a woman I'd never seen before, tall and blonde, and wearing a diamond on her finger that caught the light like a tiny sun. "Emma." Marcus's voice was warm, friendly, like we were old friends catching up. "I've been trying to reach you. I've been busy." I crossed my arms, very aware of my wrinkled scrubs, my hair in a messy bun, the shadows under my eyes. Next to his fiancée, because that's what the ring meant, obviously, I looked like something the cat dragged in and then felt bad about. "This is Amber," he said, slipping his arm around her waist. "Amber, this is Emma. We used to work together. Work together." That's what he was calling it. Not dated for 2 years, not got pregnant. Just worked together. "Nice to meet you," Amber said, her smile perfect and empty. "Likewise." I turned my attention back to Marcus. "What do you want?" "Like I said in my text, we should talk. I'm having a little celebration dinner tomorrow night. Engagement party, actually, at the Sterling. You should come." The Sterling. Of course. The most exclusive restaurant in the city, the kind of place where reservations required 6 months' notice and a credit card with no limit. "I'm working. Take the night off. It'll be fun. You can meet all our friends, celebrate with us." His smile widened. "Unless you're afraid to come alone, I know you don't really have anyone." And there it was. The knife. Slid between my ribs so smoothly, I almost didn't feel it. Except I did feel it. I felt everything. The humiliation burning through me like acid. "You came alone?" The words were going to haunt me, I could tell. Tomorrow night, when I didn't show up, he'd say them to someone. To everyone. She came alone. Poor Emma. Still alone. Can't even get a date. "I'll think about it," I managed to say. Great. He was already turning away, already dismissing me. 8 p.m. Don't be late. I watched them leave, watched Marcus lean down to whisper something to Amber that made her laugh. Watched them disappear into the night like they'd never been there at all. My hands were shaking again. I clenched them into fists, nails digging into my palms. "Em?" Sarah had appeared beside me. "You okay?" "Fine." That was your ex, wasn't it? The one who... I said I'm fine. I wasn't fine. I was the opposite of fine. I was the kind of not fine that made people do stupid, reckless, potentially life-destroying things. Like pull a business card out of their locker at 3 a.m. during a break they didn't deserve and shouldn't have taken. Like stare at a phone number for 20 minutes straight. Like dial it before they could talk themselves out of it. The phone rang once. Twice. Then, yes. That voice, dark and controlled, and somehow both familiar and completely foreign. Mr. Cross? My voice came out smaller than I intended. This is Emma Chen, from the hospital. We met a few days ago. Silence. Long enough that I thought he might have hung up, or might not remember me at all, or might... Emma? He said my name like a promise. I was wondering when you'd call. I need a favor. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I have this thing tomorrow night, this dinner, and I need an escort, not a question. A date, I corrected, my face burning even though he couldn't see me. Just for a few hours. I know it's asking a lot, and you probably have better things to do. But I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate and... What time should I pick you up? I stopped mid-ramble. What? What? Time. Each word was deliberate. Should I pick you up? 7:30, I heard myself say. But you don't have to. Address. I gave it to him, my mind spinning. This was insane. This was beyond insane. I didn't know this man. I didn't know anything about him except that he had bodyguards and expensive suits and eyes that saw too much. Emma. His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that made my stomach flip. Who made you feel like you needed to make this call? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Why? The question burst out of me. Why do you care? You don't even know me. Another pause. Then, no, but I'm going to. A sound in the background, someone speaking rapidly in what might have been Italian. I have to go. 7:30 tomorrow. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. He hung up before I could respond. I stood there in the break room, phone clutched in my hand, wondering what the hell I'd just done. And wondering why. For the first time in 6 months, I didn't feel quite so invisible. I stood in front of my closet the next evening, staring at the meager collection of clothes hanging there like they might spontaneously transform into something appropriate for dinner at the Sterling. They didn't. 3 pairs of scrubs, 2 pairs of jeans, both faded. A black dress I'd worn to my grandmother's funeral 5 years ago. A sundress with a coffee stain I'd never managed to get out. This was my life, hanging on wire hangers in a closet that smelled faintly of mildew. Wear something that makes you feel powerful, he'd said. I owned nothing that made me feel powerful. I owned things that made me feel invisible, which had been the point for months now. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant Marcus and his perfect life couldn't hurt me anymore. Except now I needed to be visible. Now I needed to walk into that restaurant on the arm of a stranger and pretend I was someone who deserved to be there. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm sending a car. It'll arrive at 6. Go with it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to type what, or why, or who gave you my number. But before I could send anything, another message came through. Trust me. Trust him. I'd known him for approximately 15 minutes of actual conversation, and he wanted me to trust him. The insane thing was, some part of me did. At exactly 6 p.m., my buzzer rang. I grabbed my jacket, the only coat I owned that didn't have holes in the pockets, and headed downstairs, expecting a cab or maybe a town car. A black SUV idled at the curb, the kind with windows tinted so dark they might as well have been walls. The driver stood beside the rear door, a mountain of a man in a crisp suit, and when he saw me, he actually nodded and opened the door. Ms. Chen, Mr. Cross is expecting you. I hesitated on the sidewalk. Every rational thought in my head was screaming that this was how people disappeared, how women ended up on the news with their photos flashing across screens, while reporters used words like tragedy and never saw it coming. But I got in anyway, because the alternative was showing up at the Sterling alone, in my funeral dress, and watching Marcus's smile as he realized I'd come by myself after all. The interior smelled like leather and something else, something expensive that I couldn't name. The seats were heated. There was a bottle of water waiting for me in the cup holder, still cold. We drove through the city as evening fell, the lights coming on one by one like stars. I watched my neighborhood give way to nicer ones, watched the buildings get taller and cleaner, watched the people on the sidewalk start wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. Eventually, we pulled up in front of a building I'd passed 1,000 times but never entered. It rose into the darkening sky like a monument to wealth, all glass and steel and understated elegance, the kind of place where even the doorman looked like he made more money than I did. The driver opened my door. 7th floor. They're expecting you. They? But he was already back in the driver's seat, and the SUV was pulling away, leaving me standing on the sidewalk in my too thin jacket, feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's life by mistake. The doorman held the door without being asked. The elevator was all mirrors and soft lighting that somehow made everyone look better. I watched my reflection multiply into infinity, and wondered if all of them were as terrified as I felt. The 7th floor was a single door. Penthouse, obviously. I raised my hand to knock, then hesitated. This was insane. The door opened. A woman stood there, elegant and poised, her silver hair pulled back in a flawless chignon. She wore all black, simple and expensive, and when she smiled at me, it was genuine warmth that reached her eyes. Emma, come in. We don't have much time. She ushered me inside before I could form a response. I'm Teresa. Mr. Cross asked me to help you get ready. The apartment, no, penthouse, because calling it an apartment was like calling the ocean a puddle, was all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city. The furniture was minimal, but clearly cost more than my car. Then several of my cars. Then every car I'd ever owned combined. Get ready, I managed to say. For dinner, dear. Come, I've pulled some options for you. She led me down a hallway into a bedroom that was bigger than my entire studio. Laid out on the bed were 3 dresses, each more beautiful than the last. Mr. Cross wasn't sure of your size, so I brought several. Let's see what works. My brain was struggling to process. Mr. Cross did this? He can be very thoughtful when he wants to be. Teresa was already holding up the first dress, a deep burgundy that shimmered in the light. Though between you and me, I've never seen him go to this much trouble. You must have made quite an impression. I cleaned a cut on his head. That's all. Her smile was knowing in a way that made my cheeks heat. Try this one first. The dress fit like it had been made for me. The fabric hugged my body in ways that my scrubs never did. Made me remember I had a shape beyond exhaustion and utility. The color brought out warmth in my skin I'd forgotten existed. Teresa worked quickly, efficiently, like she'd done this 1,000 times. She pinned my hair up in a style that looked effortless, but probably wasn't. Applied makeup with a light touch that enhanced rather than masked. When she finally turned me toward the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked not powerful, exactly, but not invisible either. Beautiful, Teresa said, satisfaction clear in her voice. He'll be very pleased. Where is he? The question came out before I could stop it. Finishing some business. He'll meet you at the restaurant. She handed me a small clutch that matched the dress. Your phone and ID are inside. And Emma? She met my eyes in the mirror. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are. Not tonight. Not ever. The SUV was waiting when I came back downstairs. Different driver this time. Equally mountainous. Equally silent. We drove through streets I recognized but had never traveled this way. Never from the inside of a vehicle that cost more than I'd make in a decade. The Sterling rose before us like a temple to excess, all warm light and perfectly dressed people gliding in and out. Valet parking. Red carpet, actual red carpet, leading to doors held open by men in pristine uniforms. I'd made a terrible mistake. I didn't belong here. I didn't belong anywhere near here. The driver opened my door. Ms. Chen, Mr. Cross is waiting inside. Somehow my legs carried me out of the car, up the red carpet, through doors that whispered shut behind me. The interior was all dark wood and candlelight, the kind of elegant restraint that screamed money so old it didn't need to announce itself. A host appeared at my elbow immediately. "Ms. Chen, right this way." He led me through the main dining room, past tables of people who looked like they summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen, past a bar where a single glass of wine probably cost more than my electric bill. I felt every eye on me, felt the weight of their assessment. Then I saw him. Damien stood at the entrance to a private dining room, and every coherent thought in my head evaporated. He wore a suit that made his hospital clothes look like practice, all black and perfectly tailored, and when his eyes found me across the room, something in his expression shifted. He moved toward me with the kind of predatory grace that made people step aside without realizing they were doing it. His guards, different ones than before, but just as obvious, maintained their perimeter, but he ignored them entirely. "Emma?" My name was a low rumble that I felt in my chest. His gaze traveled over me slowly, deliberately, and I saw his jaw tighten. "You look overdressed?" I tried for humor, but it came out breathless. "Perfect." He offered his arm. "They're waiting." "They?" But we were already moving, already entering the private dining room where I could hear voices raised in laughter, could see people gathered around a table set for what looked like 20, and there, at the head of the table, was Marcus. He turned as we entered, his smile already forming, his mouth opening to deliver whatever cutting remark he'd prepared about me coming alone. Then he saw Damien, and the smile froze on his face. Not just froze, shattered. His face went white, then red, then white again. "Marcus." Damien's voice was pleasant, conversational, but underneath ran something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "What a surprise. I didn't realize this was your engagement party." "Mr. Cross." Marcus's voice came out strangled. He actually stood up, nearly knocking over his wine glass. We didn't expect. Emma invited me." Damien's hand settled on my lower back, warm through the thin fabric of the dress. The touch was possessive in a way that should have bothered me, but instead sent electricity down my spine. "I hope that's not a problem." The entire room had gone silent. Every person at that table was staring at us. No, staring at Damien, with expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed fear. Amber's face had gone pale, her perfect smile wavering. "Of course not," Marcus said, but his voice shook. "You're always welcome. Both of you. Please sit." Damien led me to 2 empty chairs that people suddenly scrambled to make available, practically falling over themselves to move. As we sat, his hand briefly squeezed mine under the table. "Relax," he murmured, his lips close enough to my ear that I felt his breath. "You're doing perfectly." But I wasn't relaxed. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure everyone could hear it, because I was starting to understand that whatever I'd walked into, it was much bigger than I'd imagined. Marcus couldn't meet Damien's eyes. None of them could. They all kept glancing at him like he might explode at any moment, their conversations strained and false. "So, Emma," Amber said, her voice too bright, "how do you and Mr. Cross know each other?" "I treated him in the ER. I reached for my water glass, grateful to have something to do with my hands. A few days ago." "How nice." She looked between us, confusion clear on her face. "And you kept in touch?" He made an impression. Damien's voice was smooth, but his hand found mine again under the table, his fingers lacing through mine. The gesture was casual, natural, like we'd done it 1,000 times. "Emma has a way of staying with you." Marcus's knuckles were white around his wine glass. "I'm sure she does." There was something in his tone, something ugly that made my stomach turn. But before I could respond, Damien's grip on my hand tightened fractionally. "You know, Marcus," Damien said, his voice still pleasant, still conversational. "I've been meaning to talk to you about those shipments that went missing last month. The ones from the warehouse district." The color drained from Marcus's face completely. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No?" Damien's smile was sharp enough to cut. "That's strange, because I have receipts that say otherwise. Receipts with your signature." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Everyone at the table had gone perfectly still, like prey animals sensing a predator. "There must be some mistake," Marcus said, but his voice was barely a whisper. There was definitely a mistake. Damien leaned back in his chair, radiating casual menace. The mistake was thinking I wouldn't notice, thinking I wouldn't care. His eyes cut to me, then back to Marcus, thinking you could treat people as disposable. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't about shipments or warehouses or business. This was about me, about how Marcus had treated me, about what he'd done. Damien had done this for me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This dangerous, powerful man who I barely knew had orchestrated this entire evening because someone had hurt me. Because Marcus had made me feel small and alone and worthless. "Mr. Cross," Marcus was saying, his voice pleading now. "I can explain. I'm sure you can." Damien stood, pulling me up with him. "But I'm no longer interested in hearing it. Emma and I have better places to be." He led me toward the door, past the shell-shocked guests, past Marcus, who looked like he might be sick. At the threshold, Damien paused and turned back. "Congratulations on your engagement," he said. "I hope you appreciate what you have. Some people don't get second chances." Then we were out, walking through the restaurant, every eye following us. His hand never left my back. That warm, steady pressure that somehow kept me moving forward, even though my legs felt like water. The SUV was waiting. He opened the door himself this time, his guards hanging back, and I slid inside on autopilot. He followed, and the door closed, sealing us in together. Silence filled the space between us. The driver pulled away from the curb, and the city lights started to blur past. "I don't understand," I finally said. My voice sounded strange, distant. "What just happened? Who are you?" Damien looked at me, and in the dim light of the vehicle, his eyes were black pools that reflected nothing. "Someone who doesn't like seeing people hurt." "That's not an answer." "No, it's not." He reached up and loosened his tie, the gesture somehow intimate. "The truth is, Emma Chen, I'm someone you should probably be afraid of." "Why don't I feel afraid?" The question came out as barely a whisper. His hand came up, his fingers brushing my cheek with unexpected gentleness. "That's what concerns me most." The SUV stopped. I looked out the window and realized we weren't at my apartment. We were at his building, the one with the penthouse and the view of the city. "I can't," I started to say. "I'm not asking you to come up." His thumb traced my jawline, and I shivered. "I'm asking you to let me make sure you get home safely. That building you live in, Emma, the locks don't work. The security is non-existent. Anyone could walk right in. How do you know where I live? I make it my business to know things." He dropped his hand, but I could still feel the ghost of his touch. "Especially when it comes to people who matter." "I don't matter to you. We just met." "Yes." His eyes locked onto mine. "You do." And no, we didn't. Before I could ask what he meant, he was getting out, offering his hand. Against every instinct of self-preservation I possessed, I took it. His penthouse felt different at night. The city lights stretched below us like a carpet of stars, and the space seemed to breathe with shadows and secrets. Damien's guards had disappeared the moment we entered, melting away to wherever people like that went when they weren't needed. I stood by the windows, my arms wrapped around myself despite the warmth. Behind me, I heard him moving through the space, the soft clink of glass on glass. "Here." He appeared at my elbow with a tumbler of amber liquid. "You're shaking." "I'm fine." But I took the glass anyway, let the burn of expensive whiskey steady my nerves. "Why did you do that tonight?" "You needed help. I provided it." He stood beside me at the window, close enough that I could feel his warmth, but not touching. "That's all." "That's not all. You destroyed him." Marcus looked like he was about to pass out. I turned to face him. "What did he steal from you?" Damien's jaw tightened. "Does it matter?" "Yes. Because I need to know if I just walked into something dangerous. If Marcus is going to..." I stopped, the thought too terrible to finish. "Marcus isn't going to do anything." His voice was absolute, certain. "He knows what happens to people who cross me. What happened tonight was mercy, Emma, a warning instead of something much worse." The words should have terrified me. Instead, they settled into my chest like truth I'd always known. This man was dangerous. This man had power that went beyond money or influence, and somehow, impossibly, he was using that power to protect me. I should go home. I set the glass down with trembling fingers. This was a mistake. All of it. Was it? He moved closer, and I found myself backed against the window, the cool glass a shock against my spine. Tell me you didn't enjoy watching him squirm. Tell me you didn't feel relief when you walked in there on my arm instead of alone. That's not the point. That's exactly the point. His hand came up, bracing against the glass beside my head. You called me because you needed someone. I came because I wanted to be that someone. Where's the mistake? You don't even know me. I know you work yourself to exhaustion in a hospital that doesn't appreciate you. I know you take the overnight shifts no one else wants because you can't afford not to. I know someone hurt you badly enough that 6 months later you still flinch when people get too close. His eyes searched mine. I know you're stronger than you think you are, Emma Chen. My breath caught. How do you know all that? I told you. I make it my business to know things. He leaned in slightly, and I caught his scent, cologne and leather, and something uniquely him, especially about people who interest me. Why do I interest you? The question came out barely audible. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. That's what I'm trying to figure out. The moment stretched between us, electric and dangerous. Then my phone rang, shattering the tension like glass. I fumbled for the clutch Teresa had given me, pulled out my phone with shaking hands. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer it, Damien said, his voice sharp, but I was already swiping to accept. What? Emma, please, you have to listen to me. Marcus's voice was high, panicked. I don't know what you told Cross, but you need to fix this. You need to tell him there was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. Emma, please. He's going to ruin me. Everything I've built. Everything I've worked for. You mean everything you stole. The words came out cold, surprising even me. Everything you lied about. I never... He stopped, and I heard him breathing hard. Look, what happened between us, that was personal. This is business. You can't mix the two. You mixed them first when you showed up at my work to humiliate me. I wasn't trying to humiliate you. I was trying to be nice, to include you. By making sure I knew I'd be coming alone. By reminding me I have no one. My voice rose despite my best efforts. You wanted me to feel exactly what I felt, Marcus. Small and pathetic and invisible. Don't pretend otherwise. Damien's hand appeared in my line of vision, palm up, a silent request. I looked at him, saw something in his eyes that made my decision easy. I handed him the phone. Marcus. His voice was silk over steel. Let me be very clear about something. You're going to leave Emma alone. You're not going to call her, text her, or acknowledge her existence in any way. If I find out you've even looked in her direction, what happened tonight will seem pleasant in comparison. Do you understand? I couldn't hear Marcus's response, but I saw Damien's expression harden. Your engagement is the least of your concerns right now. I suggest you focus on how you're going to explain the discrepancies in your accounts to your partners. I hear they're not as forgiving as I am. He ended the call and handed my phone back. He won't bother you again. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He moved away, creating distance that somehow felt worse than proximity. You should stay here tonight. What? It's late. You're exhausted. The guest room has everything you need. He was already walking toward the hallway. Teresa left clothes for you in the closet. Damien. He stopped, his back to me. I'm not asking you to sleep with me, Emma. I'm asking you to let me take care of you. There's a difference. Why? The question burst from me like a confession. Why do you care so much about what happens to me? He turned slowly, and the look on his face made my heart stutter. Because when I saw you in that hospital, working yourself to death, so tired you could barely stand, you still treated me with kindness. You didn't know who I was, didn't care. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped them. He took a step toward me. Do you know how rare that is in my world? I was doing my job. You were being human, in a way most people forgot how to be. Another step. In a way I forgot existed. The air between us felt charged, dangerous. I should have left. Should have insisted on going home. Instead, I heard myself say, "Where's the guest room?" Relief flickered across his features. Gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Follow me." The guest room was beautiful in that same understated way as the rest of the penthouse. The bed looked impossibly soft, and through the windows, the city glittered like a promise. "There's a bathroom through there," Damien said, gesturing to a door. "Clothes in the closet, like I said. If you need anything, I'm down the hall." He started to leave, but I caught his arm. "Thank you. For tonight. For all of it." His hand covered mine where it rested on his sleeve. "Get some sleep, Emma. We'll talk in the morning." After he left, I stood in the center of the room, trying to process everything that had happened. The dress, the dinner, Marcus's face, Damien's words. It all swirled together in my head like a fever dream. I changed into the silk pajamas I found in the closet. Of course, they fit perfectly, and slid between sheets that felt like clouds. I should have been too wired to sleep, too overwhelmed by the day's events. Instead, I fell asleep almost instantly. And for the first time in months, I didn't dream about Marcus or the baby I'd lost, or the life that had slipped through my fingers like water. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back. I found Damien in the kitchen, dressed casually in dark jeans and a gray sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. He was reading something on his phone, a cup of coffee in his other hand. "Morning," I said, suddenly self-conscious in the borrowed pajamas. He looked up, and his eyes softened. "Morning. Coffee? Please." He poured me a cup from a machine that probably cost more than my car, handed it to me in a mug that felt perfect in my hands. I took a sip and nearly groaned. It was the best coffee I'd ever tasted. "I should get going," I said, even though part of me wanted to stay in this beautiful space forever. "I have a shift tonight. I'll have someone drive you." He set his phone down, giving me his full attention. "But first, we need to talk." My stomach dropped. "About what?" "About what happens next." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Marcus isn't going to let this go quietly. He's going to try to find ways to get back at both of us. I don't have anything he wants. You have the ability to testify about what you know, about his dealings, his contacts." Damien's jaw tightened. "And you have my attention, which makes you valuable in ways you don't understand yet. I don't know anything about his dealings. But he doesn't know that." He moved closer. "Which means you need protection. I can't afford protection. I'm not asking you to pay for it." His hand came up, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "I'm offering it freely." "Why?" I stepped back, needing space to think. "Why would you do that?" "Because..." He stopped, something flickering across his face. "Because people who matter to me don't get hurt. That's how this works. I don't want to matter to you." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. "I don't want to be part of whatever world you live in. Too late." His voice was gentle, but absolute. "You became part of it the moment you called me. The moment you let me walk into that restaurant with you." He closed the distance between us again. "The moment I decided you were mine to protect. I'm not yours." "No," he agreed, "not yet." The words hung between us, heavy with promise and threat in equal measure. My phone buzzed in the bedroom, probably the hospital wondering where I was. "Real life. Calling me back. I have to go," I whispered. "I know." But he didn't move, didn't let me pass. "Emma, I need you to understand something. My world is dangerous. The people in it don't play by normal rules. If you stay close to me, that danger extends to you. Then I'll stay away. Will you?" His eyes searched mine, because I don't think either of us believes that anymore. He was right. God help me. He was right. Something had shifted between us, something I didn't understand but couldn't deny. When he looked at me, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen in a way that was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "Let me protect you," he said softly. "At least until the situation with Marcus settles. Then, if you want to walk away..." I won't stop you. Promise? His smile was sad. I promised to try. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was honest. And somehow, that mattered more. Okay, I heard myself say. Okay. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of normalcy, punctuated by moments that reminded me my life had fundamentally changed. Damien kept his distance, mostly. But his presence was everywhere. The locks on my apartment building were fixed overnight. A new security system appeared in my studio, installed by efficient men who didn't ask questions. My landlord suddenly remembered he'd been meaning to fix that leaking faucet for months. And everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me. Not threatening, protective. His people, watching from the shadows, making sure I was safe. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. Marcus kept his word, or rather Damien's threat kept him silent. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits to the hospital. I heard through Sarah that the engagement party had been the talk of the social circuit, specifically, the moment Damien Cross had walked in with me on his arm, and Marcus had nearly collapsed. Who is he? Sarah had asked over terrible cafeteria coffee. And more importantly, where can I get one? I'd laughed it off, made vague comments about him being a friend, nothing serious. But at night, alone in my apartment with its new locks and security system, I thought about dark eyes and gentle hands, and a voice that made promises I wasn't sure I wanted him to keep. He texted me occasionally, simple things. Did you eat today? Or how was your shift? Messages that should have been casual but felt weighted with something more. I always answered. I told myself it was politeness, gratitude for his help. I wasn't ready to admit it might be something else. 2 weeks and 3 days after the disastrous dinner, I was working a rare day shift when my phone rang. Unknown number, but something made me answer. Emma Chen? A woman's voice, professional and cool. Yes? This is Jennifer Walsh from St. Catherine's billing department. I'm calling about your outstanding balance. My stomach dropped. I'd been avoiding thinking about the hospital bills from the miscarriage, the ones that had piled up faster than I could pay them. I'm on a payment plan. Yes, I see that here. I'm actually calling to inform you that your balance has been paid in full. The world tilted slightly. What? Your account shows a payment of $47,322 received yesterday. I wanted to confirm you authorized this payment. I didn't. My voice came out strangled. Who paid it? The payment came from Cross Industries. If there's been an error, I hung up without responding, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. He'd paid my medical bills, without asking, without telling me. He'd just erased debt that would have taken me years to clear. I should have been grateful. Instead, I was furious. My break wasn't for another 2 hours, but I found Dr. Patterson and told him I needed to leave early. Family emergency. He took one look at my face and nodded without questions. I had Damien's address programmed into my phone now, though I'd never admitted to myself why. The cab ride felt endless, my anger building with every block. By the time I reached his building, I was vibrating with rage. The doorman recognized me this time, waved me through without questions. The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt like descending into battle. I pounded on his door hard enough to hurt my knuckles. It opened almost immediately. Damien stood there in dress pants and a partially unbuttoned shirt, clearly in the middle of getting ready for something. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me. Emma, you had no right. I pushed past him into the penthouse. No right to do that without asking me. He closed the door carefully, his expression unreadable. You're talking about the hospital bills. Of course I'm talking about the hospital bills. That was almost $50,000, Damien. $50,000 you just threw at my problems like it was nothing. To me, it is nothing. He moved toward me slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Emma, you were drowning in that debt. I could help, so I did. I didn't ask you to help. You shouldn't have to ask. His voice rose to match mine. You take care of everyone else, every patient who comes through those doors, every person who needs you. Who takes care of you? I take care of myself. I always have. And look where that's gotten you. He gestured at me, his control finally cracking. You work yourself to death for a hospital that pays you barely enough to survive. You live in an apartment that isn't safe. You eat 1 meal a day if you're lucky. That's not taking care of yourself, Emma. That's just surviving. Maybe surviving is all I can afford right now. But it's not all you deserve. He closed the distance between us, his hands coming up to frame my face. Don't you understand? You deserve so much more than what you've settled for. Tears burned my eyes, and I hated them. Hated the weakness they represented. You can't just fix everything with money. That's not how life works. I know that. His thumbs brushed away the tears that had started to fall despite my best efforts. But money is what I have, Emma. And if I can use it to make your life even slightly easier, why wouldn't I? Because I don't want to owe you anything. Something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. Is that what you think this is? Some kind of transaction? Isn't it? You help me? What? What do you want from me, Damien? I want you to stop working yourself into an early grave. I want you to eat regular meals and sleep in a safe place and not look like you're about to shatter every time someone touches you. His hands slid down to my shoulders, his grip firm but gentle. I want you to let me care about you without questioning my motives every time I do something nice. Why? The question tore out of me. Why do you care so much? You barely know me. I know enough. His voice dropped, intense and urgent. I know you're stronger than you think. I know you feel things deeply even when you pretend you don't. I know that when you smile, really smile, not that fake thing you do at work. It feels like the sun coming out. He pulled me closer, and I know that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment you touched me in that hospital, and it terrifies me. The confession hung between us like lightning about to strike. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I couldn't tell if it was fear or something else entirely. This is crazy, I whispered. We're crazy. Probably. His forehead touched mine. Does that change anything? It should have. Nothing about this made sense. Not his interest in me, not the way he made me feel, not the dangerous world he inhabited that I was somehow becoming part of. But sense had nothing to do with the way my body responded to his nearness. The way my hands had somehow found their way to his chest, feeling his heartbeat thundering under my palms. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I don't know how to let someone in again. Then we'll figure it out together. He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. But first, you need to understand something. When I help you, when I fix things or pay for things or protect you, I'm not expecting anything in return. I'm not keeping score. I'm doing it because seeing you struggle when I could ease that struggle physically hurts me. That's not normal. No, it's not. A small smile played at his lips. But I stopped being normal a long time ago, Emma. The question is whether you can accept that. Could I? Could I accept a man who paid my bills without asking, who had guards follow me to make sure I was safe, who looked at me like I was something precious and terrifying at the same time? Could I accept the danger that came with him, the world of shadows and violence that lurked beneath his expensive suits and gentle touches? I'm scared, I whispered. Good. That means you're smart. His hands moved to my waist, anchoring me. I'm scared too, if that helps. Of what? Of how much I already care, of what I might do to keep you safe. His eyes darkened. Of how far I'd go if someone tried to hurt you. The words should have been a warning. Instead, they felt like a promise. One that settled into my bones like truth. I need time, I said. To think about all of this, to figure out what I want. Take all the time you need. But his hands tightened fractionally on my waist. Just promise me you'll stay safe while you're thinking. Your people are still watching me, every moment. No apology in his voice. Does that bother you? It should have. No, I admitted. It makes me feel protected. Something fierce and possessive flashed across his face. Good. We stood there in his penthouse, wrapped in each other, the city spreading out below us like a canvas of possibilities, and for the first time since Marcus had destroyed my life, I felt something other than pain, or exhaustion, or numbness. I felt alive. My phone buzzed, shattering the moment. I pulled away reluctantly, checking the screen. Sarah asking if I was okay, reminding me I'd run out of my shift without explanation. I have to go, I said. Deal with work, explain my disappearing act. I'll have someone drive you. Damien. Emma. He caught my hand, lifting it to his lips in a gesture so old-fashioned it should have been ridiculous, but instead made my breath catch. Let me do this one small thing. Please, I nodded, not trusting my voice. He walked me to the door, his hand a warm pressure at my small of my back, a touch that felt like ownership and comfort in equal measure. At the threshold, I turned back. The hospital bills, thank you. Even if I'm angry about how you did it, I'm grateful. It was drowning me, I know. His smile was soft, genuine. That's why I did it. The SUV was waiting downstairs, the same driver who'd picked me up for the disastrous dinner that had changed everything. He nodded at me in the rearview mirror, and I found myself smiling back. My phone rang as we pulled into traffic. Unknown number again, but different from the hospital billing department. Hello? Emma Chen? A man's voice this time, rough and unfamiliar. Yes? You need to stop seeing Damien Cross. For your own good, walk away now. My blood ran cold. Who is this? Someone trying to save your life. Cross is dangerous. More dangerous than you know. People around him end up dead or worse. If you're smart, you'll disappear before he decides you know too much. The line went dead. I sat frozen in the back seat, the phone clutched in my trembling hand. The driver's eyes found mine in the mirror. Everything okay, Ms. Chen? Was it? Nothing about my life was okay anymore. I'd stumbled into something far bigger and more dangerous than I'd understood, and I had no idea how deep the water was, or if I'd already gone too far to turn back. But as we drove through the city streets, past my hospital where I'd spent so many hours feeling invisible, past my old apartment building with its broken locks and leaking faucet, I realized something crucial. I didn't want to turn back. Whatever came next, whatever danger lurked in Damien's world, I was tired of just surviving. For the first time in my life, I wanted to actually live, even if it killed me. I didn't tell Damien about the phone call. Not right away. Instead, I went back to work, smiled at Sarah's concerned questions, and threw myself into my shift with the kind of focus that came from not wanting to think too hard about anything. But the voice haunted me. People around him end up dead, or worse. 3 days passed. 3 days of normal shifts and careful smiles and pretending everything was fine. 3 days of Damien's texts that I answered with increasing honesty, of feeling his guard's presence like a shadow I'd learned to find comforting rather than suffocating. 3 days of trying to convince myself I could walk away if I wanted to. On the 4th day, everything fell apart. I was leaving the hospital after a night shift, exhausted and ready to collapse into bed, when I saw him, Marcus, leaning against a car across the street, watching the employee entrance with the kind of focus that made my stomach drop. I froze on the steps, every instinct screaming at me to run back inside, but he'd already seen me, was already pushing off the car and crossing the street with purposeful strides. Emma, we need to talk. Damien told you to stay away from me. I pulled out my phone, ready to call. Who? The police? Damien's guards who I knew were somewhere nearby? This is important. It's about Cross. Marcus looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. Please, 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I nodded. 5 minutes. Right here where people can see us. He glanced around nervously, like he expected someone to materialize from the shadows. Maybe he did. You don't know what you've gotten yourself into. Cross isn't who you think he is. I know exactly who he is. Do you? Marcus laughed, bitter and sharp. Do you know about the warehouse fire in 2019 that killed 3 people? The shipments that go through his docks that aren't exactly legal? The way people who cross him tend to disappear? My mouth went dry, but I kept my voice steady. If he's so dangerous, why are you still alive? Because I'm useful. Because I have information he needs. Marcus stepped closer, and I saw fear in his eyes, real, genuine terror. But you? You're a liability, Emma. You know about me, about the engagement party, about how he operates. Once you're not useful anymore, That's enough. The voice came from behind me, deep and cold and absolutely furious. I spun to find Damien emerging from a black SUV I hadn't noticed pull up. He moved with deadly purpose, his guards flanking him, and the look on his face made my blood freeze. Marcus went white. Cross. I was just threatening her, I heard. Damien's hand found my lower back, that possessive touch I'd come to recognize after I explicitly told you to stay away. I was warning her. She deserves to know. What she deserves, Damien cut him off, his voice dropping to something dangerous, is to be left alone by men who've already hurt her enough. He looked at his guards. Escort Mr. Hayes to his car. Make sure he understands that if he comes near Emma again, our arrangement is over. Marcus's face crumpled. Please. The engagement is off. I've lost half my clients. Amber's family wants nothing to do with me. Consequences, Damien said simply. For your actions. Be grateful they aren't worse. The guards moved forward, and Marcus stumbled backward, his earlier bravado completely gone. You're making a mistake, Emma, he called as they led him away. He'll destroy you like he destroys everyone. Then he was gone, shoved into his car that peeled away from the curb like the devil himself was chasing it. I stood frozen on the hospital steps, my heart hammering, trying to process what had just happened. Damien's hand was still on my back, that steady pressure that somehow kept me grounded. How long were you here? I asked. Long enough. He turned me to face him, his eyes searching my face. Are you okay? I don't know. The honest answer. Is what he said true about the fire, the shipments, the people who disappear? Damien's jaw tightened. Yes. The single word hit me like a physical blow. Part of me had been hoping he'd deny it, laugh it off, tell me Marcus was lying, but he didn't. He gave me the truth, sharp and brutal. I'm not a good man, Emma. His hands came up to frame my face. I've done things that would horrify you, hurt people, destroyed lives. I operate in a world where violence is currency and loyalty is bought with fear. Then why? Because you're different. His thumbs brushed my cheekbones. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to want to be better. Not good. I'll never be good. But better than I am. Tears burned my eyes. I got a call. 3 days ago. Someone warning me to stay away from you. His expression darkened. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid you'd do something terrible to whoever it was. Because I was trying to decide if they were right. I covered his hands with mine. Because I'm terrified, Damien, of you, of your world, of how much I already care about you despite everything. You should be terrified. He pulled me closer, until we were nearly touching. Everything Marcus said is true. I am dangerous. Being with me puts you at risk. The smart thing would be to walk away right now, and never look back. I know. But you're not going to, are you? Something like hope flickered in his eyes. No. The word came out steady, certain. Because I've been safe my whole life. And where did it get me? A man who threw me away the moment I became inconvenient. A job that pays me barely enough to survive. An existence that felt more like drowning than living. I stepped closer, closing the distance between us completely. Maybe danger is what I need. Maybe you're what I need. His control snapped. His mouth found mine in a kiss that was nothing like gentle, nothing like careful. It was possession and promise and desperation all mixed together. And I kissed him back with everything I had, pouring 6 months of pain and loneliness and fear into the connection between us. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. If you stay with me, I can't promise you safe. I can't promise you easy. All I can promise is that I will protect you with everything I have. That anyone who tries to hurt you will answer to me. That you will never, ever be invisible again. That's enough. And it was. God help me, it was. That's more than enough. Come home with me. Not a question, but not quite a command either. An invitation, an offering. Stay, I should have said no. Should have asked for time, for space, for some semblance of rationality in this insane situation. Instead, I nodded. The penthouse felt different this time, or maybe I felt different. less like a visitor, more like someone who belonged. Damien's guards melted away as we entered, leaving us alone in the space that overlooked the city. "I need you to understand something," Damien said, leading me to the windows where we'd stood weeks ago. "My enemies will see you as a weakness. They'll try to use you to get to me. There will be danger, real danger, and I can't always protect you from it. I understand. Do you?" He turned me to face him. "Because once you're mine, truly mine, there's no going back. I don't share, Emma. I don't let go. If you give yourself to me, I'll keep you. And I won't be gentle about it." The words should have scared me. Instead, they ignited something in my chest that felt dangerously close to desire. "Show me." His eyes flashed dark. "Emma, show me what it means to be yours." I reached up, my fingers finding the buttons of his shirt. "I'm tired of being careful, tired of being afraid. Show me what happens when I stop running." For a moment, he just stared at me like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. Then his control shattered completely. He kissed me like he was trying to consume me, his hands everywhere at once, my waist, my back, tangling in my hair. I responded with equal fervor, tugging at his shirt until buttons scattered across the floor, running my hands over skin that was hot and solid and real. "You're sure?" He breathed against my lips. "Once we do this, I'm sure." I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. He swept me up, carrying me down the hall to his bedroom. Not the guest room this time, but his space, his territory. The bed was enormous, the sheets dark silk that felt cool against my overheated skin as he laid me down. "I need to hear you say it," he demanded, his body covering mine, his weight perfect and overwhelming. "Say you're mine." "I'm yours." The words felt like freedom. "I'm yours, Damien." What happened next was not gentle. It was possession and claiming, and two people who'd been dancing around each other finally giving in to the inevitable. He worshipped my body with hands and mouth, learned every sound I made, pushed me higher and higher until I shattered in his arms. And when he finally entered me, when we moved together in perfect synchronization, it felt like coming home to a place I'd never known existed. Afterward, we lay tangled together, the city lights painting patterns across our skin. His fingers traced lazy circles on my shoulder, and I felt more at peace than I had in months. "I meant what I said," he murmured into my hair. "You're mine now. I'll kill anyone who tries to take you from me." That should probably worry me more than it does. His chest rumbled with quiet laughter. "Probably." He pulled me closer. "Move in with me." I lifted my head to look at him. "What?" "Your apartment isn't safe. Here I can protect you properly. Here you can have everything you need." His hand cupped my face. "Here, you can be with me. Damien, that's..." "Say yes." His thumb brushed my lips. "Let me take care of you the way you deserve. Let me give you the life Marcus should have given you." "I don't want Marcus's life. No. You want better." He smiled, and it was genuine, warm. "So let me give it to you." It was too fast, too much, too everything. But when I looked into his eyes and saw the absolute certainty there, the fierce protectiveness and possessive need, I found myself nodding. Yes. The word changed everything. Within a week, my belongings, what few I had, were moved into his penthouse. Within 2 weeks, I'd given notice at my apartment. Within a month, I'd cut back my hours at the hospital to something almost reasonable, because Damien refused to watch me work myself to death. Marcus disappeared from my life completely, though I heard rumors he'd left the city, moved somewhere far away where Damien Cross's reach didn't extend. Amber had apparently left him before the move, taking her family's money and connections with her. I should have felt guilty. I didn't. Sarah visited once, her eyes wide as she took in the penthouse, the view, the clear evidence of wealth beyond imagining. "So you're really doing this? Playing house with the scary mob guy?" "He's not mob. A technicality. Damien's business empire existed in legal gray areas, but he wasn't traditional organized crime. And I'm not playing. Emma." She caught my hand, her expression serious. "I'm happy you're happy. Really. But be careful, okay? Men like him, they're not safe." "I know," I squeezed her hand. But safe hasn't worked out so well for me. Maybe dangerous is exactly what I need. 6 months after that night in the hospital when I'd cleaned blood from a stranger's temple, I stood in Damien's penthouse, our penthouse, wearing a ring that had appeared on my finger 2 weeks prior. Not an engagement ring, he'd explained. A promise ring. A symbol that I belonged to him and he to me. The future stretched before us, uncertain and probably dangerous. His enemies were real, the threats not imagined. But when Damien wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder as we watched the city below, I felt safer than I ever had, trying to be invisible. No regrets? He asked softly. I thought about Marcus, about the life I'd lost, about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Exhausted, invisible, drowning. Then I thought about the woman I was now. Seen, claimed, alive. No regrets. I turned in his arms, rising on my toes to kiss him, not a single one. His arms tightened around me, possessive and protective and perfect. Good. Because you're stuck with me now, Emma Chen. Forever. Forever sounded dangerous. Forever sounded impossible. Forever sounded exactly like what I'd been searching for without knowing it. Forever, I agreed, and kissed him again. Outside, the city glittered with possibility. Inside, wrapped in the arms of a dangerous man who'd somehow become my salvation, I finally understood what it meant to truly live. Not safely, not carefully, but completely, intensely, dangerously alive, and I wouldn't have it any other way.